Congratulations, everyone. We've made it through the first chapter. We're moving on to chapter 3, section 1. We're talking about graphing and coordinates depending on the different quadrants. The first one is just being able to read a bar and a line graph. So some examples, all right? Based on this information, the first thing you need to know is the title. The title of the graph, so on the bottom right-hand side, will help you know exactly what it is. So this one, we're looking at the endangered species in the U.S., all right? On the left-hand side, we have the number of species, so that's good to know. On the bottom, we have the different types of species that were studied. So if we're looking at this and we're trying to find the birds that are endangered, you would look at the types of species. Now we're looking for a number, obviously, because that's what it asks for. So I'm going to find birds and I'm going to follow that bar up and I'm going to get an approximate answer because I don't have every single label. And I know based on the lines, I'm going to be above 75 but below 80. Because it is closer to 80, I'm going to give it the approximate of 78 birds are endangered in the U.S. If you said 77 or 79, that's fine because this is an approximation. So when you're approximating something, it does not have to be the exact number. You just need to be close. Another example is to find the fewest endangered species. So for here, we're not looking at a number, but we are looking for the bar line that is the smallest, okay? The bar line that is the smallest. So based on what I can see, the reptiles and the arachnids are very close, but it looks like the arachnids are just slightly lower, so it's just closer to that 10 marker. So I'm going to choose the arachnids. Now, plotting, all right? So this is important, but here are a few vocabulary words that are just important to know. The first are ordered pairs. So an ordered pair are two numbers associated on a point in the graph, okay? So the first number that's given, these are usually in parentheses. So the first number is always going to be on the horizontal, okay? So that means it's going left to right. The second one will be on the vertical location, which is going up and down on your paper. A coordinate is just an ordered pair, so you'll have an x coordinate and a y coordinate. So it's always parenthesis x coordinate, comma y coordinate, and then close off the parentheses. An x-axis is that horizontal line, so the one moving left to right. The y-axis is the vertical line, all right? So the one moving up and down. The origin is important because it's where the two axes cross. So that was always 0, 0. It's always in the middle. And there are 4 quadrants that you need to know. In the next couple slides, I'll tell you exactly where those quadrants are. This is just good information to know. When you are graphing an ordered pair, so you have an x-axis and a y-axis. So we're going to make x-axis an A and the y-axis a B. All right, you are always going to start with the A units. So whatever that number is, you're going to move that many units left or right, depending on if it's positive or negative. All right, then you take from that location that you figured out for X, and you're going to move B units up or down. So whatever the number is, and it's dependent again on whether it's positive or negative. If that's confusing, we will go over it in class more, and feel free to ask questions. Here's my graph, all right? So we have a lot of information. I'm going to go through this a little quickly. So our origin, like I said, is where the x and y cross, and it will always be 0, 0, so it's right in the middle. If I was given a location and I was moving my arrow, so I see this arrow, I'm going to count how many lines to the right. Because I'm moving to the right of the number line, that makes it positive, so I'm going to have a positive 5 to the right. Okay, then I have to move my arrow up. That's just where I'm showing you where it's going. So I count the number of lines to that point, and I know I'm moving 3 units up. So when I write this, I'm going to put a point right where I am, and it will show as a 5, 3. So that means 5 units to the right on the x-axis and 3 units up on the y-axis. This is quadrant 1. Okay, so this is quadrant 1 because both x and y are positive. So anytime you have 2 positive, like the 5 and the 3, you will always have a quadrant 1 number. Quadrant 2, you always have on the top left-hand side, because that will be a negative x and a positive y, and I'll go through examples in a minute. Quadrant 3 is on the bottom left. Again, you have a negative x, but then you have a negative y. So when you have two negatives, you're always going to end up in quadrant 3. Quadrant 4 is on the bottom right-hand side. That is a positive x, but a negative y. So don't get quadrant 1 and quadrant 4 confused. So remember, quadrant 1 is a negative x with a positive y, and quadrant 4 is a positive x with a negative y. Here's an example. So in quadrant 2, we have a negative 4. So I went 4 units to the left, and then I went a positive 2 units. So 2 units up, I end up in quadrant 2. Now this one gets tricky. Whenever you have where either it is on the x-axis or the y-axis, and it is 0, so you didn't move to the right or left. So this one tells me that instead of being in a quadrant, I am on the y-axis. So if it's asking you, they will try to trick you at least once. If you have a 0, 5, you'll be on the y-axis. Okay, if you had a 5, 0, then you would be considered on the x-axis. Okay, there's an example, -6, 0. So I went -6 units to the left, but I didn't change off the y, so I'm on my x-axis. Okay, and then quadrant 4, you have a positive and then a negative y. So a positive x and a negative y is quadrant 4. Okay, so here's a little practice. We will go through this slowly in class, but here's a quick review if you forgot. So I have all my different ordered pairs, and I'm going to plot them really fast. So I have 4 plus 2, I have -3, -2, 2, -3, 0, 4, and 5, 0. So based on the question, I need to state which quadrant or which axis each one points on. So I like to color coordinate, as you know, so I color coordinated my answers. I know that 4, 2 is in quadrant 1 because they are both positive. I know that -3, -2 is in quadrant 3 because they are both negative numbers. Okay, those are easy. Quadrant 4 is a positive x and a negative y. So my green one is in quadrant 4, and anytime you have that positive x and a negative y, you will be in quadrant 4. And then here are example of the y and x-axis. So the 0, 4, 5, 0 are on the axes. So just be aware of which one you're on. If you have moved left or right, you're on the x. If you moved up or down, you're on the y. Graphing ordered pairs, all right? So paired data are data that's represented as ordered pairs, so that x and that y. A scatter diagram is a graph with ordered pairs that point in a rectangular coordinate system. So that's a lot of words. Let's do an example, all right? So here's an example of just a lot of information, all right? So these are my ordered paired, okay, my paired data. And so I need to coordinate them. So I'm going to create a graph that has the year and the number of tornadoes. I like to use a T-chart for stuff like this. So I have the year and I have the number of tornadoes, and I just plug in my numbers. So in 2007, there was 1,096 tornadoes. In 2008, there was 1,692 tornadoes, and you go on from there. Once this information is down, I can go to my next. So I need to create a scatter diagram of my paired data. Okay, the scatter diagram is taking this information and putting it on a graph. So on the base, I'm going to put the number of years, and you can space them out just like they did. All right, just make sure they're equal apart. And then I'm going to have the number of tornadoes. Remember, the bottom left is my origin, because that's the middle, so it's 0, 0. All of these numbers are positive, so I only showed quadrant 1 in this graph because I don't have any negative numbers, so there's no need to draw that much. Then I start plotting, all right? So I plot all I know. So I knew that in 2008 I had like 17,000 roughly, or excuse me, 1,700, so I put the dot there, and I just roughly go. So then I need to figure out if there are any trends. So what I know based on this information is that the number of tornadoes varies. So there's nothing consistent about this scattered graph. Now, if it was the bullet points were going in a consistent straight line, going from the bottom left to the top right, that tells me that it's consistently increasing. If it is a diagonal facing down, so it starts high at 1800 and drops down to 600, and it's consistent, then it tells me it's consistently decreasing. In this case, they're just random every year, so it varies. That's what I can learn. All right, so now ordered pairs is a solution. So we got really good at solving for x and y and all that good stuff in the last couple weeks. So now it's taking the ordered pairs. So when you're having a solution, they'll pretty much always give you an equation. Occasionally they'll make you find it, but for the most part they'll give it to you. So your job is just to plug in the numbers and see if the equation comes out to be true. So the first one in A, we have 0 and we have a positive 12. 0 is the x, 12 is the y. I plugged that in, so if you see below, I color coordinated. I plugged in my 0 and I plugged in my 12. When I solve, I have a negative 12 on the left-hand side, and I have a positive 12 on the right-hand side of the equal sign. That's false. That means that equation is not true. So 0, 12 is not a solution for the equation I was given. Okay? Then I could slot in B. So I'm going to take 1 and negative 9. Oops, sorry. And I'm going to slot it in. So I do the same thing. So I put it in, and then when I finish, I see that 12 equals 12 on the bottom, and I know that solution is true because 12 does equal 12. So then when I was asked to find my ordered pair, if it's a solution, I would circle B as my answer. Okay, because A didn't work. A was not true, but B is true. So then you're done. So 1, negative 9 is your solution. Completing ordered paired solution. All right, so a lot of words, okay? So in general, an ordered pair is a solution. Okay, so the x-axis y solution is a solution of an equation if two variables are replacing the variables by the values of the ordered pair. Okay, only if the result is a true statement. So just like we did, I'm going to go back. So just like here, we have our 1 and our negative 9. When we replace those, it became true. So then that is our solution. All right, that's what all this is saying. All right. So complete the ordered pairs. You guys practice this in class. We're going to go over it really quick. So I know that my x is 3, which means I'm solving for y. So I'm going to plug in 3 because that's the number in the front in my parentheses. So I'm going to take that x and I'm going to multiply by 3. Okay, so I replace x with 3. I solve like normal, so I multiply 3 times 2, which is 6. I'm going to subtract 6 on both sides, so I get a 5y equals a negative 10, because negative 4 plus a negative 6 is a negative 10. Divide by 5 on both sides. I cannot just drop my negative, so I know y equals a negative 2. So that solution is done, so it's 3, 2, and I am done. So my completed ordered pair is an x-axis of 3 and a y-axis of negative 2. Here's the last example just with a y. So I'm going to because the negative 7 is in the y-axis, I'm going to plug it in for y and solve for x. So here's my color coordination. I plug it in. So I have 3x minus a negative 7. So I'm going to then change that, because remember, when you have two signs next to each other, you change the sign and add. So I simplified it. I made it easier. It's the same as multiplying negative 1 by negative 7. You get a positive 7. All right? Subtract 7 from both sides, and you get a negative 12, because negative 5 plus a negative 7 is a negative 12. Divide by 3. X equals a negative 4. All right, I plug that in, so my completed order pair will be negative 4, negative 7. This, because both numbers are negative, I know I'm going to be in my quadrant 3, which was the bottom left-hand side.